Welcome everybody to a special edition of Umble and Gohornsgo podcast. No, we're not going to be talking about the Nexus Season 4 finals. We are going to be talking about the experience each of us just had in the 2020 Dixiecon Diplomacy Tournament. Umble, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Much more rested than from Saturday after 16 hours of straight diplomacy.
But how rewarding it was because you, my friend, ended up placing fourth,
Yes. Yeah,
one
there was
off the podium.
yeah, that seems to a lot of times be my be the ending of where I go at tournaments. When I was in Tempest, I actually tied for third, but in the tiebreaker and went to fourth. But in this one, of course, there were 80 players. I was just a few centers off of second. It was it's hard to. I'm very happy. I was really excited when I got fourth because I had no idea. I thought I'd probably be in the top 10, and as they just announced the top 7, and it kept going and going, and I had no idea score wise where I was going to be, and so just to hear fourth, I know I was excited. My wife and I, we were traveling actually to see family, and we had pulled over, had some things that we had to stop, and so we were listening though, and so when we heard fourth, we high fived, we were excited, and also got best England, so they're going to send me something for that. So all in all, it was a great experience. Got to play against some great players, and it'll definitely be up there in the highlights of my diplomacy tournament competition.
Well, luckily you have a wife who supports diplomacy. I merely have a wife who tolerates it. Uh, this is uh, this is my man cave hobby that I'm allowed to have. But maybe we should start off before going into the games and how well you did, and my game as well, which I acquitted myself okay for only playing one of the two games. I wasn't able to play both for personal reasons. Uh, why don't you tell people what Dixiecon is? I assume most of our listeners are from the Nexus server, so they have some familiarity with it. But if it might be good to give some background. It's probably the oldest prestigious tournament, or at least one of them.
Yeah. It's my understanding is the oldest continuous running tournament in North America. For me, it's been a dream to be able to play it because it just feels like a connection to the past in a lot of ways. David Hood, who organizes it, does an amazing job. Um, and the people that go and play there are some of the best. It's oftentimes the most well attended tournament in North America, and so with the coronavirus, they decided they were still going to hold it, but they were going to go online. This is the first online tournament as such that went online, and they had 80 people play, along with many people who would watch through a live stream that was done, and so it was just all around a very exciting experience. The interface was almost like a blend of online and face to face. There were 15-minute deadlines. Generally, they let you they allowed you to communicate how you wanted. In my games, the first game, it was very much through either chatting through the WebEx platforms, or people would call and actually have voice conversations through it. So that's how the first game it went. The second game was pretty much just chatting. There were no voice calls, but people could do whatever they wanted. And I found it really great because I'm someone that enjoys having multiple conversations with people going at once and really being able to kind of work the board. And so I felt I was able to have a much greater influence on the board than I would normally in a face-to-face, just because I could have way more conversations within 15 minutes than I could talking with people individually. So it was a unique experience that I don't nobody there had ever had before, whether you were just an online person or a face-to-face person. So it was unique, and by all accounts, incredibly successful. Everybody walked away. We're very glad that they did it. There's improvements to be made for sure, but David Hood and the team hit it out of the park.
I couldn't agree more. I do have some quibbles, but those are overshadowed by the number of assets and wonderful things that this tournament showed. And there is zero doubt to me that what Dixiecon this year did, due to coronavirus, because it couldn't be played face to face, is the future of diplomacy. This is the future. It is traveling is cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So face to face is difficult. Of course, they will always go on. Online has a number of limitations, which we've discussed on our podcast ad nauseum. This almost seemed to me the only acceptable and entertaining hybrid of those two formats. And with the technology being the way it is, I think you will see, and I hope to see, many, many more tournaments follow this format.
Yeah, my personal hope is not so much, I suppose, that this is the future. My real big hope that I would love to see is that club play in, whether states or cities really has a renaissance, and there's much more face-to-face club level. I think this can help with that. The more that you're bringing people together, I think can only increase that. But I definitely would not. I don't want this to take the place of the face-to-face community. I want this to help the face-to-face community and also become its own thing. I think it's only going to make diplomacy stronger. And
it will make online players better as well.
Yeah, for sure. Because being able to look at a board and make quick decisions and be able to have conversations with people quickly is not only is it a good, and I would say a more skillful way to play, because it reflects a lot on your knowledge of diplomacy, because the deeper your knowledge is, the more experience you have, the more you're going to be able to play that part well. But not only does it do that, it's a much more exciting way to play because everything is quick. And while online is great, setting up all of these things, waiting day after day after day, doesn't have the same adrenaline rush as, okay, 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes. It's its own kind of rush. So I think people should try it. There's definitely, it's not going to be for everyone for sure, but it is in a lot of ways, I feel, a greater representation of your ability as a diplomacy player, because it's one thing to be able to sit down and over a day, come up with something. It's another thing to be able to sit down, look at the board, make a decision, and come up with some really creative things. Now, that's my opinion, but I really like how they did this with being able to incorporate, both online and, in a sense, quick deadlines, but also to the side, like you can really chat and talk with people. It was great.
I loved it. The thing I loved the most about it, other than just talking to people, was if you made a bad play or a bad move or something bad happened, you don't have to dwell on it. You just got to move on quickly, and you can try and work, right away, and try and fix the issue. But I'd like to talk to you about two preliminary things before we go into analyzing some of the games here and acknowledging our winner, who was Christian Klein. Andrew Goff was second, quite a well-known person in the diplomacy world, and Jonathan Saul was third, and Umble was fourth. The first thing I sort of want to talk about is the format of Dixiecon. In my life, I used to teach, and I used to do a lot of tournaments, sort of like a debate tournament coach. It's more complicated than that, but I've been to many, many tournaments in my life, and I found a little dissatisfying that winners were announced of 80 players after 2 games, and that there was no top board game. In other words, was the best cumulative results after 2 games with the 80 players, as opposed to taking the top 7 into a game the next day. What did you think about that?
Well, I think it would be very difficult to do that. In fact, a lot of face-to-face tournaments don't have top boards just because it requires a lot more extra time that people have to put in. Usually you have what you're doing then is you're doing 2 Friday games and 2 Saturday games, or sometimes a Friday night and 2 Saturdays. So a lot I I was okay with there not being a top board. There's something to be said about having that, and I think that would be enjoyable. But this particular format, it would be impossible, I think, for people to do 3 games in this kind of a tight framework. Now, an idea could be that you have at some point kind of like a league play, where over the course of maybe 2 or 3 months, you have different games. Everybody maybe plays at least 3 at some point, and then you, out of that group, do a final board. But I think it would be very difficult to do something like this and even have more than 2 rounds because, I mean, after 2 rounds of my play, I mean, I was out of it. Now, if I was on a top board, would I have gone and played it the next day? Probably. But I don't. People would have hated doing it. If you were part of the 7, you want to enjoy the diplomacy game and not be like you're about to die. So I would. It's great to have a top board. I think that'd be great, but I don't think with this type of format you're going to be able to get very many games. Now, personally, I think a great idea to make it a little easier on everyone would be to have a tournament where there are two rounds, but only your top game counts. Because there's different parts of the world, and not there were some people who just couldn't play 2 games because maybe they were in Australia, or maybe they, were in another time zone that it just wouldn't work to do that. So I think that having that option. So if people really want to play 2 games, they can, but only your top game counts. I think that would actually be a more sustainable way to do the tournaments. You could do more of them, and I think having that live commentary and everything would just make it a great prestige tournament in the diplomacy community. So I actually feel like limiting it a little bit more would make it more sustainable.
Well, that might be so. And I would propose to the people at Nexus listening to run one of these 3 tournament, 3 league games, and then a top board, sort of like you do on the actual online championships. I think it would get a lot of participation and be helpful, but that's just me talking. And what do I know? The second thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I want to discuss with you, is the way this tournament worked in terms of communication. There were multiple ways people communicated with each other. One was over WebEx Teams, which I learned all about through you, Umble, which was sort of like a fancy chat function. Then there was just the games were run on Backstabber. You could press each other like people do on the Backstabber format. Then there was actual texting on phones because people gave out their phone numbers, and I received a lot of texts. And there was also, phone calls. I had, and I'll tell my game. I mean, I had Eddie Brisson is a legend of the game, but a little older. And the man had a difficult time with the technological interfaces. And he's like, if you want to talk to me, here's my phone number. That's it. There was no texting with Eddie. It was only phone. It was sort of like Goodfellas. Paulie only got talked to by one person at a time. And in the WebEx team chat, of course, they had the video conferencing option, which was used quite a bit in my game. But all the different methods of communication were exhilarating and challenging at the same time. What did you think?
Well, I actually found there was only one person that wanted to use the Backstabber interface, and you were going to be at a great disadvantage if you used, because Backstabber's not made for fast games. It just, the way they do updates, the way they do emails, it's not instantaneous. So you got to refresh the page over and over. Now I had already set up one of my windows. I had 3 screens I was operating off of. So I had already set up one of my windows to have in my Gmail account for it to automatically forward any emails from Backstabber to a particular folder that I had. So the one person who was trying to contact me through that, I would see when they would email me, but that person wasn't able to keep up the communications with everyone because they weren't in WebEx Teams doing chat. And so because of that, she never got really an ally, and she got smashed really quickly. The AT took her out, and I would be in contact with her, but using the Backstabber interface was not good for this format, and other people who used that said the same. The WebEx one was great, and that's pretty much what all my games were around. And there were some voice calls, but most of it was just chatting through that, and you could have real quick conversations, keep things rolling. And I think that I think this format needs to be in a chat. So there's talk about it going to Discord. That's a great place for it. It needs to be an instantaneous notification for this format in 15-minute time frames to work. You should not be doing email through Backstabber. You're going to be behind on that. You're going to have a hard time, I would say, having the same kind of influence as other people on the board.
One thing I would like to see in future tournaments is a little more time before Spring 1901. Not because Spring 1901 is a challenging season, but it is important to try and talk to people. But in this format, it was critical to learn how people preferred to communicate. And that itself was eating up valuable time and affected my game in Spring 1901. But once you got the hang of it, the other thing you said, which I think is totally right, you had 3 screens. I only had 1. I tried to get my iPad as an extra screen and was having problems with it, and eventually got it to work. But you need at least 2 screens to keep track of everything that was going on. And I had set up my text messages to my computer, so luckily I was able to text on my keyboard as opposed to the phone. But I loved it, and frankly, it was just thrilling for me because I haven't played a face-to-face game in 30 years. Okay, so older than most people listening to this podcast. And within minutes, I'm video conferencing with a neighboring power, and I'm able to talk and see and get a read on that person and not have to worry about formulating the precise communication, but rather it was, I could read them and feel them, and I feel like that was just such a wonderful experience.
Yeah, so the way I had my setup, on my my right, I had the WebEx chat. On my left, I had my Gmail ready for Backstabber, and then in the middle, I had the map. And then down below that, I actually had a digital stopwatch, so I would sync that up with the Backstabber one so that it would go off a minute early, because it was so easy to get lost in that quick time frame because you have to refresh with Backstabber. So I would have that running too so that I wouldn't miss deadlines. So I thought about it. Okay, what's going to be the best way for me to do this? And it really helped me kind of stay on top of everything. There's nothing I would really change with my setup. So if I do another tournament like this, it's going to be the same way. Have the same type of setup. It helped me to do it.
The third thing I guess you need to know, which I didn't pay attention to, was exactly how the tournament is scored. Having done a lot of tournaments in another life, I know that's so critical, but Umble, I did not read your criticaldiplomacybriefing.com the week, as I should have, and I got punished for this, learning about Dixiecon and when it was open until the day before. And I just spent my time getting into the tournament and trying to spend my time doing that and not really reading about the scoring system. but people who did, like yourself, I'm sure, understood how to play. All right, look, I think it would be productive to go through uh, some of the important moves in the games just to show how they went down and to get your thoughts about this and the format that may have happened. We're going to go to your round one game called Mech Deck. And I would have known which power you drew just by the moves because I'm starting to understand you a little bit. But you are playing France, as we can see here. France Umble the Heap ends up in a four-way draw at the end. And there were some heavy hitters in here. You had Chris Brand as Russia, as a former world champion. Why don't you talk about how the game sort of started, and then why you picked Fall 1901 as an important move set to talk about?
Well, if you've listened to the Nexus Finals, you'll know that I prefer supporting Paris into Burgundy on the first turn, just because it guarantees that you're going to have influence on Belgium. You're also somewhat keeping Germany honest, and you are 100% not going to get jumped by Germany either. Now, Germans don't usually like it, but the truth is, it doesn't have to be a negative thing for Germany at all. You can support him to Belgium. So which makes everything fine. If you support him to Belgium, he's not going to care that much that you were in Burgundy. Now, in the fall, the reason I brought this part up was just to mention real quick that always remember that Belgium is incredibly important, not so much that you get it, but that you use it to develop an alliance. And you can see in this one, I supported England into Belgium. In my discussions, I found England and me to click together. And not only that, he was very prompt. He responded more regularly than Germany did. And so for me, that's really important as an ally so that we can bounce things off. But I helped England get to 2 builds. I always start off, if I'm Germany, France, or England, at some point I let people know I'm flexible about Belgium, and I see who's willing to work with me on it. So I never told Germany I was going to support him in, but I supported England in. And I can't remember what I told Germany why I did that, but me and him continued to have a good game. Our good relationship for a while.
You and Germany, even though you put England onto the continent.
And you notice that's the other thing to remember. Sometimes it's
how did you keep Germany liking you, even though you put England onto the continent? Germany surely didn't like that.
Well, there's 2 things about that. First off, I think it's always in your benefit, whichever of those 3 powers you are, you want the other 2 powers, either one to support you, and you want someone else to go for Belgium, because what that does is that immediately kind of creates a divide between them. So Germany going for Belgium and England going for Belgium, they're both trying to get it. And so you've created a dividing line between them. And even though I supported England in, Germany's going to want to be working things out. And you're going to see as this game goes on, I was able to use that relationship. And though me and England were kind of working together, I was also working with Germany to slow England down. And so Germany wanted to work with me because England also tried to grab Belgium. So that's automatically some conflict.
Okay, so the next season you wanted to talk about in this game was Fall 1902, which I should have up here. And by the way, let me ask you, Umble, in this format, I found it very difficult to pay attention to what was happening on the other side of the board time-wise. I wasn't fixated on it until it was maybe too late, but Turkey opens up north on your board. There's a lot of really interesting things going on. What were you thinking? Were you looking at all that at the same time?
When it came to Turkey and Austria, my 2 powers were France and England in the game. I didn't engage as much as I should have. That's probably the biggest thing I walked away from, is trying to make sure, at least from either Turkey or Austria, really develop a strong relationship. Now, I talked with Turkey on the phone at one point, but he was almost gone. And I feel like developing a more rock solid relationship with one of them would have helped me perhaps get to a higher level draw. So I didn't get to put in as much time as I normally would. Probably about the same amount of attention I would do in face to face, but with these particular powers. But I would say the same. I didn't put in the same amount of effort. Now,
So hold on before you talk about this. On fall 1902 moves, you're France again. I will say that you said that there was a live cast of the game and of all the games, and there is, and you can go watch it on YouTube through the Windy City Weasels. If you put that in the search bar of YouTube, you can see the live cast of each game. Before you tell me what you were thinking, I will tell you, I was not surprised at this move. I was watching your game after I got back from my other engagement, waiting for my game to start. And I saw the 2 fleet holds, and I saw helping England get back into trying to help England back into Belgium. But they were a little critical of those fleet holds for you. And why don't you give your thinking on what you were doing here?
Yeah, it was interesting because I went back and looked at it. Yeah, there was kind of some debate among themselves about, okay, shouldn't those fleets be doing something? But Chris Martin came to my defense and said, you don't always have to do something. you can wait it out. And so the thing is, those fleets are going to do something, but it wasn't the time to do it. And I was kind of waiting for the opportunity, because one of the things you noticed that England is no longer in Belgium. Well, I didn't really want him in Belgium.
Did you tell Munich to cut? Did you tell Munich to cut your support?
I did. I told it was it.
Dog.
Yeah, it was interesting in the live stream them talking about Germany's great tactical abilities, which I'm not saying he doesn't have, but the reason why he actually went up a unit was because I fed him the exact moves that England was going to do. I said, if you want to keep Belgium, you're going to need to break support in Burgundy. And also, if you want to keep yourself from losing Denmark, you need to support Denmark into Hegel and Blight. Now, maybe he would have done that on his own. I don't know. But I fed him exactly that. And I did it, I think, also the move before this. I can't remember if I did 3 seasons or 2 seasons of actually telling him what everything was going to do. But I did get a few people contact me, and they were suspicious that I was doing that. And, I put it off, but that's exactly what happened. And
what
I
did
think
you
that's an
tell
important thing to
England?
remember.
What did you tell England about the fleet holds? I'm sure England was worried. I assumed you said, well, I'm holding. And I guess England felt a little desperate, so it's telling you everything he was going to do.
Well, we were coordinating, and so I was able to determine from, I think, talking with Russia and England kind of what was going to happen. England was going to be the one who got it, something like that. But
why did you want to slow England down?
Because if England makes a whole bunch of, this is the problem with the EF alliance. I personally prefer a French-Germany alliance, my natural preference. The problem with the EF is England can grow a lot faster than France, because it's a lot easier to grab those northern centers than for France to take out Italy. So I generally prefer to take out England first. And so I wasn't really wanting him to get those centers that quick before I made a decision what to do. Really, I was waiting to set up a stab ultimately on England, but I'm telling England that I'm getting ready to drop against Italy. I'm telling Italy that I'm going to drop against England. So they're both kind of believing they want to believe both of them.
Were you at all involved in Ruhr moving to Kiel?
Well, I think that's just a natural move that you're going to make.
Because the fleet
just to
and
block.
Hegel and Blight.
Yeah.
Because that's very fortuitous for the build.
Correct.
So, all right. So we will now go to the next thing that you wanted to point out, which was winter of '03, the builds.
Yes.
And Germany disbands Fleet Skagerrak, and you build in Marseille. Why is this important to you?
Yeah, by that point I had taken Belgium. So England lost Belgium and disbanded Picardy, and the result of that then was I was able to take Belgium for myself. So now I was getting a build, and now was the decision point. So I told Italy, I said, look, I'm building Fleet Marseille. I have to build it. I said, you build a fleet in Naples, it doesn't matter to me. I have to build Fleet Marseille so I can get the jump on England. You can't expect that I'm coming. So I told Italy that, and Italy said, hey, thank you for the heads up. So that's something important to remember. Like, if you're going, especially as France, if you're going to get the jump on Italy or England, you have to create your opening. And so by building Fleet Marseille, I was creating the opening to stab England.
How does Italy know? How does Italy think that? Would Fleet Brest have been too obvious? Is that because if I was Italy and you go, well, I'm setting it up for the stab of England, and I'm like, well, I got a better idea. Why don't you build in Brest?
Well, because first of all, Italy was being played by a very experienced diplomacy player. I would say, one of the best that currently plays, especially in the face-to-face scene.
Conrad Woodring.
Right. Yeah, he recently just won, a tournament put on by the London group that was actually an online, quick format. So he was a very good player. And plus, I had been keeping in contact with him consistently, telling him a truthful thing. As France, I don't like attacking Italy. I prefer to focus on my side. So I had been building that up. And not only that, telling him that, not surprising him, but telling him that builds a sense of, okay, he's doing this. And two, for him, it makes sense. So, he had no problems. He was good. And you're going to see, in the next move, he actually moves his fleets away at the same time I attack England. So
here we
go.
There it is. He moves to the Ionian. He moves away. He goes full on to help himself in Turkey a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do your patented North Atlantic move. And I already know you're setting up that convoy. I haven't even looked, but is that the idea?
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to convoy straight into Liverpool. And the guys on the podcast pointed out something really important. They said, he should have done London to Yorkshire just as a precaution. And that would have been good. Now, I would have just convoyed into Clyde then. That's why I like going to North Atlantic, because it's not a guesswork then. You can definitely get that army onto England. I would have just done it that way, but he didn't move up there, so that meant that I was going to be able to convoy straight into a center, and that's what I did.
Why did Belgium hold? I assume Holland asked for support, but also England wanted support.
Yeah, it probably should have supported Holland. That would have been the smart thing to do. In fact, if it would have supported Holland, I would have probably never attacked Italy later. So yeah, that would have been the better thing to do. I think maybe Germany and I weren't really talking because I wasn't going to tell him I was going to attack England. But that would have been the better thing to do for sure.
How does England react?
He was cool, but England was a very personable and good player, and so he was, hey, you can turn around, you don't need to do this. He's giving me some ideas, and but at the end of the day, I still convoyed in. But that's a good point. I should have supported Holland, because what happened then in the next one is I think I did support Kiel to Holland, but his fleet he just disbanded his fleet and built an army. And so that really changed the calculus of my attack. So, that would have been the move to do. I give Germany back his center, but it didn't really matter. So that was a lot of that was just time. I was trying to work everything. So I didn't really get to help Germany in that moment, but I should have saw that. I missed it. But I convoy to
Well,
Liverpool. I get my build.
you can't be perfect.
No.
But it's one of the great things about diplomacy. We're looking at the fall 1904 moves, just as you said. You convoy into Liverpool, but your fleet, Spain, southern coast, and the Ionian hold. Was there some arrangement with Italy there?
Well, there's just really no place for it to go, and that's where it was, and that's going to become very important as we go into this next year.
All right. You build an army, and
convoy
lo
to
and
North
behold, convoy from Liverpool to North Africa, giving England back Liverpool and putting the jump on Italy, which maybe he did or did not see coming. Tell me the thinking here. This was my favorite play of the game.
There were two parts to it. The first part was with England getting to build that other army and put it back because he did a disband. With that happening, that meant that it was just going to take a lot longer to kill England. Now, it wasn't that it couldn't happen. It could, definitely. And perhaps that would have been on the long term the smarter way to do it. But I looked then to something that was going to be very easy and also kind of fun, and that was to kill Italy. And England didn't. I don't remember if England gave the North Africa option. He might have. I don't remember. But as I looked and thought it out long term, I saw there was a really neat tactical thing you could do. And like I said, I already liked England. I had really enjoyed talking with him. And the ability to kind of go back and get this rolling, because you can see at this point he has 4 centers. I kind of like that. And I also told him, I said, if you will leave me Liverpool in the short term, I said, I'll do that because I'm going to need to build another fleet. So he said, well, I'm going to take it, but I'll give it back to you. I don't know if he said possibly or probably. I'm not going to stay in there. So anyway, I make the convoy, and definitely Italy was not expecting it, that fleet being in Spain, South Coast, was going to guarantee me Tunis then. And and I was ready to roll. And so the next one, this is kind of important. And this next move, I was pretty proud of personally.
Liverpool moves out of Clyde, and you get Tunis.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I really like here, I think the normal thought would be support the army to Tunis, but I put the fleet in Tunis. And the reason is because in the next year, I'm going to support I'm going to support the fleet up into Tunis. I'm sorry, in the Tyrrhenian Sea, and I'm going to move the army there and set up a convoy route right into Italy. So
and you're thinking about this right at the time.
Yeah, I that was the plan on how to go about getting Italy. So that was very exciting for me. And I was, and now, by the way, let me add this. I made this move because I had talked with Austria, and Austria was, yes, I'll stab Italy, and so that we can go to a 3-way draw. That had been my point going into this game. I want a 3-way draw. And so everything was really dictated on that. And so I thought, you know what? If I can keep England in there and get the 3-way draw, that's preferable than Italy, because Italy was doing well, a great player, and I thought there was less chance England's going to stab me than Italy. So
sell England on this by saying, look, I've got a build in Marseille coming. Right. If this is not going to be effective against Italy if I don't get a build, it just means I have to fixate on you.
Right. And I said, look, I'm going to be moving away. You can grab it, when you need it. I said, but wait till I get one more on the continent and I get Rome or something, then take it back, and I'm going to be completely focused on Italy. And interestingly enough, we're going to get to the end of the game, and I never lost Liverpool. I continued to need it the whole game.
And of course, England gets into Denmark, so it's not a bad year for him.
No, he's getting a build. And I'm getting a build, and we're moving along.
All right. You built a fleet Marseille, which makes sense. I guess the Italian army had to retreat. I'll go back and look at it, but from Tyrol, the Italian army had to retreat and pick Piedmont, but you can salvage that with a build, which you did, and you would have built there anyways. So now we go into 06.
You'll notice Italy gets a build and Austria pulls one off. Now, it's interesting. I was talking with Russia, and I told him, yeah, we're going to split up Italy. And Russia said, I don't think that's going to happen. And that's, by the way, that was Chris Brand. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, Austria is doing whatever Italy wants. Italy is writing Austria's orders. And I'm thinking, well, why would he tell me he'd attack Italy then? Because he has no benefit saying that he'll attack Italy, because that's just going to get me to go south. That doesn't help Italy. That was kind of strange to me. Come to find out, Austria, this was the first tournament they had ever played. Now, I think they're a good player. This was the first tournament they'd ever played. And so a lot of times people in their first tournament aren't confident to go it alone or to stab their ally. And that was going to dictate the end of this game. And so if we go one more, so he already took off a unit to give Italy a build. If we go one more, we'll see the crystal opportunity where Austria could have stabbed Italy for 3 centers. This was the chance
for us. This is fall 1906.
Correct. And if he would have done this was like 2 o'clock maybe, I think, 2:15. We had been playing for a little over 4 hours. If he would have done this, we would have been able to wrap this game up. Instead, we're now going to play till 5:45, 15 minutes before our next game was to start.
Austria, and you'll notice Bulgaria, Venice,
Greece.
Oh, yeah, and Greece.
Yeah. So he could have dropped down and grabbed 3 centers from Italy, which would drop him to 4. And I told him, I go, you can get Rome, I'll just get Naples. But Italy, now, and I have to give Conrad credit for this, he basically kept Austria on the phone or on chat, voice chat, like throughout every turn almost. Like it was impossible to pull him away to talk with him. And so Conrad just had him under his spell because Austria wasn't confident. And this made it a 4-way draw. I felt like I was so proud of my attack on Italy. And it's so disappointing to me that Austria would not make the stab. And Austria would have board topped that, and he would have got a 3-way draw, which would have put. And I told him, I said, it's going to put all of us in a great position to place in the second round. And I said, not only that, we're going to be taking out a really good player who's going to hurt his ability to place. I go, it's a win-win for everybody. But he just didn't have the. I think he just didn't have the intestinal fortitude. Yeah, to do it himself, and it was incredibly.
Now, are you videoing with him at all? Are you reading him, or is it just chat?
Well, we audio chatted twice, and it was so surreal. It was like he just couldn't read the board. He was like, oh well, you might solo if I stab him, and there was no way as France that I was going to solo if he stabbed Italy, because by that point you can see, especially as we go on another year, you can see that England and me don't have the army units to get a solo. It just wasn't there. And you'll see too, England moved out of Liverpool again. I appreciated that. And now, instead of stabbing him, he gave Italy 2 builds, and now things have changed, and I'm not going to be killing Italy at all. And short story,
and if anyone was going to... What about now? Did you think about going after England at this point? Because you were worried about AI right now.
Yeah, you see all those fleets. And not only that, he can take Liverpool whenever he wants. So I'd immediately lose a unit if I tried to attack England. And the truth of the matter is this. If anybody was going to get stabbed now, by this point, for it to become a 3-way, it was going to be me. So I was completely focused and committed to holding back AI. England had the flexibility to do a lot of things. And so it got to a certain point where I realized if we don't get a 4-way draw, if they try to make a 3-way draw, I'm the one who's going to get stabbed. And England eventually said that. So it was getting closer to our second game, and they finally agreed to a 4-way draw. If things had continued and England didn't stab me, I would have lost Tunis, but the stalemate line was done. if you jump to the end of the game, the stalemate line is there. It's going to be over, and I think it's 1910 or 11 or something. You can click the middle, and just jump to it. So the stalemate line was, I just had to pull back into Spain, and then the stalemate line was set. I would have lost Tunis eventually because they load up like 5 fleets. But incredibly disappointing to me that it was not a 3-way draw. I felt like this is the big thing. I would have continued to attack England if Austria would have said, "I'm never attacking Italy. We're going to the end of the game, so you better go towards England." But because he didn't have the foresight to actually dictate what was happening, he got me to attack his ally. So, all in all, I came out of it very disappointed that was not a 3-way draw, because I felt as France, I had done everything I needed to make it happen. But you have to give credit to Conrad as Italy. He did exactly what he needed. So, good job to him.
All right. We will go to my game, and I'm going to show you fall 1901, and you can interrogate me on how dumb my moves were. But let me tell you how it started and where I was at. I've got Eddie.
I think you need to show. I think you need to show spring 1901, because that's my first.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. You can see it either way. All right, you can have all your cake and eat it too. All right, so I've got obviously some good players in my game. I've got Edie Bresson. Let's call him Diplomacy Ambassador Emeritus. Certainly the longest playing diplomacy player alive. Has seen everything and done anything. And if you ever want to read an article, I would commend to you Diplomacy, the Game of the Alpha Nerds, which was on Grantland. A lot of it is almost autobiographical about Eddie. So this is where I was greatly helped, never having played Eddie before, listening to the live stream of the round 1 games, because these announcers, including Chris Martin, were all sort of everyone liked Eddie, and they talked about his style. And so, man, I was excited to see him, because at least he's a legend, and I thought this is just going to be cool no matter what happens. And then you've got Nikolai, and I can't pronounce his last name, Sauge. He's French. He's a former world champion. And then a bunch of people I didn't know. So I'm Austria. I'm like, okay. I mean, I play a decent Austria sometime. I had not played game 1. So this is critical to my thinking. I had not played game 1, and I said, these are long games. I have to do well, and I have to at least see if I can solo, period. This was my entire thinking in terms of trying to get up there in the tournament. I viewed that as a low chance. And so I was thinking go big or go home, because I don't want to play, 5 hours to be a small center draw. I'd rather just get knocked out early. I had the good fortune of video chatting immediately with Italy. Young guy. I could tell just by his demeanor he was a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I know how to talk to lawyers. And we sort of hit it off right off the bat. I could tell he was pretty, not inexperienced maybe at diplomacy, but I assume this was his first tournament. He told me he got knocked out immediately in the first game, and he just wanted to hang on longer. I'm like, fantastic. I go, well, you got 2 good players in Russia and Turkey, and if we don't stick together, we're screwed. And I said, we need to do Lepanto. And he's like, yeah, for sure. And so I felt like I had a pretty good relationship with him off the bat. Turkey, I also felt like I had a good relationship with. He just goes, I'm doing standard Turkey moves. He said, I'm not even going to worry about my game until fall 1901. And we started chit-chatting a bit. He turns out to be a big Star Trek fan. I'm a Star Trek fan. This is the great thing about this video chatting and texting, because you can, if you're able to find a nugget with somebody quickly, it'll be very helpful. Now, Eddie was an enigma because I spent all of my 15 minutes trying to reach out to Russia. My thinking was, oh, well, he may move to Gal, but I didn't think he was going to go Moss to Ukraine because I thought he might be worried with Nikolai and England, just given Nikolai's reputation. And I had written him a text, and I wonder if my text is available in the WebEx meeting. All right. Here, I'm going to show you this was how I reached out to Eddie Brisson. This is my style, which is a little different. I can't be Umble, and you can only be you in life. And my style is trying to immediately find commonality, but I am particularly good at people who are a little older than me, both in life, in my normal life. I always found mentors, and I loved that Eddie was a little older because I sort of know just what to say to folks like that. And I'm going to shift.
We're talking about being a suck up.
A little bit of a suck up. I'm as good about. I can suck up.
Older people love it. Younger people do that.
They do because it's a tried and true tactic. Here's my text message, my first one. I can't believe I'm chatting with Eddie Brisson, the legend. I'm little old Austria here. How about you ride me along, then stab me at the end? It'll make a better story for me. I'm like, I wanted to play right into this guy right off the bat. And then I'm like, I can't communicate with him. Can you hear me? You got to turn your mic on. I'm talking, but not hearing you. This is now, you can see 8 minutes of this. Okay. We've had no coordination whatsoever. He can't hear me. I can't hear him. It's a bit of a disaster. And so I'm like, all right, screw it. Go big or go home. And I'm going to go and do dangerous Austria moves to try and guarantee 2 and see how it turns out. And you can see it turned out awful because Eddie moved Ukraine and Warsaw south, and Italy, who had not told me Venice was holding, but when we agreed on Lepanto, I didn't think he was going to move Venice to Tyrolia, and it's not looking good. And in fact, I think I texted you during the game saying, it's going to be over soon, dude.
I think you said, I'm too ashamed to show you my moves.
That's how I felt. I didn't want to tell you the game I was in. I knew I was going to have to face the Umble Reaper. And I'm like, I can't believe this has happened to me. But I used it really helpfully in fall 1901, because look at what I have to do. I've got an issue with Vienna. I got an issue with Trieste. I've got, Galatia. I've got Tyrolia, and I've got an open Greece. And first thing, I essentially just play Italy and Russia off of each other a little bit. And I go to Italy. I go, you're gonna pick Eddie Brisson over me? I go, you're done. I go, Turkey's gonna roll through you. And then I went to Eddie, and I'm like, Eddie, I'm just here for the experience, man. Whatever you want to do, I'll do. And I go, I can get you down into Bulgaria. But I tell both of them, right? They both ask me what I'm going to do. And I tell Italy, I'm moving Budapest to Vienna and Serbia to Trieste. I said, I got to cover my own. I can't get bounced, and I don't care if I get a build. I'm 100% convinced Eddie told Turkey I was moving to Trieste, which I never intended to do. I was always just going to go for 2, and come what may of it. And I get the 2, and Turkey then gives me a gift, just an absolute gift, moving Constantinople to Smyrna. Really hurting their build position in fall 1901, and that was all I needed to sort of rock a bit. And then let's see here.
So Italy
Don't mean
was
to make it
going
a
for
monologue.
that wasn't agreed about. He was trying to get a center from you.
The bounce in Vienna was arranged, correct?
Oh, okay. So he was okay with just kind of acting like you guys were upset.
Correct. Actually, it was his suggestion. Originally, he was like, "Well, why don't you just, move Budapest to Trieste, and me and Russia will bounce in Vienna." By that time, I had already talked to Eddie, and I'm like, I felt pretty certain. By this time, I had found out that Eddie will only talk on the telephone, old school, and I used all my charms right off the phone with the guy, and I at this point knew once I sort of said I'll be your vassal, it was going to work. And I think we just sort of got along personally. But then I found him to be a very straight guy. And yeah, the thing with Italy me was arranged in Vienna. I get the 2 builds. Italy's a little honked off because I had told him I'm covering Trieste, right? So he didn't think I was going to get 2. But
that's weird.
I
think he you think he told Turkey about that?
I think Eddie did.
Okay. So they both thought you were moving to Trieste, and perhaps Turkey was going to thought I'm going to get into Serbia.
Correct.
But I don't think that's the case, because if that was true, he would have done Khan to Bulgaria. No, I don't think so, because Turkey, if he thought for sure he was getting into Serbia, he wouldn't have done the move set he did.
Yeah. So maybe it was just a odd move.
Yeah, I think it probably had more to do with, well, if this happens, then, I'll get into Serbia and he'll be in a little worse position perhaps. But, having a fleet in Constantinople is a horrible thing to take from Bulgaria later on, because you don't want to put a fleet into Bulgaria. Generally, it's not that's not the most ideal place for a fleet. You want the army. So, yeah, I don't think anybody told them. I'm not sure what ultimately his thought process there was, but it definitely wasn't, I think, coordinated.
So here I know I'm golden, okay? Because at this point, the only thing I didn't like was Eddie using Ukraine to move down to Romania as opposed to Galicia, but fine. I got that. I got my builds. But the way Turkey had positioned himself, I'm like, Eddie can't like that. I went to my old playbook, which is Umble tricks. Eddie calls me on the phone. He's like, I'll get you into Bulgaria. And I'm like, no, I got a better idea. You go to Bulgaria. And then you get me into Khan. And he's like, done. And so, it was that quick. Now, I didn't like this original move south by Eddie. I mean, St. Petersburg and Moscow goes south. I have a hard time with that. But Italy's now on board for the Lepanto. You can see he's totally moved back. And then my moves essentially ensure I thought about that Bulgaria would retreat to Greece, and I knew I could get it back. And so all's looking good for me in 02.
Yeah, that was good, because you got all that pressure that was on you. You got it off. Italy went to Venice, and by pushing Russia into Bulgaria, now you don't have to worry about Galicia. You don't have to worry about trying to do all these weird supports. That was an excellent move.
Yeah, and I actually learned it from you, that concession early, don't get greedy. Pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. I told Eddie, exactly, someone had said Eddie was writing my orders. No, I'm like, dude, do it this way. And that was awesome, because he said, all right, let's do it that way. And then, of course, we have a tremendous, now Eddie's calling us the team. Italy, Austria, and Russia. And the way we're communicating is I'm video chatting with Italy the whole time, and I've got Eddie on the speakerphone. over my computer. So it's a 3-way chat, and we're just, here we are. Meanwhile, Turkey's uh, given up. He's told me Khan's open. He told me his moves, and once he told me his moves, and that Smyrna was vacating, that was great. So I told Italy he's going to take Smyrna. He doesn't have to move to Syria. Boom, we get him into Smyrna. We get Khan, and
Great.
And everything's looking good.
I mean,
now
that's
here,
incredibly efficient. Fall 1902, Turkey is at 1. Like, you can't have a better air alliance than that. That's about as efficient of an air alliance that I've ever seen. For Turkey to be at 1 center in 2 years, I mean, it usually takes 4 to 5 to get that.
we won no awards, okay, but I think that the guy who was Turkey got the award for like quickest out of the tournament. So I'll take that as a bit of measure of satisfaction, and so I was very happy with the way that worked. Now here's where things get a little dicey. I'm going to Italy. I'm like, look at the fleet move from the French. Look at that. You need to be worried about France, and you need to be worried about France now. Okay, that move was not done for no reason. There's a reason there, and he didn't really get on board with that. Okay, and I don't think he saw it right away. But what ends up happening is, at that point, we're on the phone, and I'm like, hey, everyone's got to move against Germany, and I'm thinking it's probably. I mean, Eddie wants to know what to do. I said, let's get Turkey wrapped up. We start going to Germany, and then you'll see the moves. But I just knew the way the board was set up that things were going to be blocked, pretty quickly. And of course, here's what happens. France then makes. There's the Western Triple. We were too efficient with Turkey. They got weirded out right off the bat. And so immediately you see this dynamic that plays out for three seasons, where there was a lot of fighting in the West, but they realized how quickly we were working, and they got it together, all coordinated by Nikolai. And I get Italy into Ankara so to get a fleet build, but I was we both sort of, all three powers on each side of the board went against each other at the exact same time. Let's hear.
So, like, for me, like, when I looked at that, I feel like you moving on Germany and not on Russia was a few things. I think you were making a move that was going to limit your end game, because Germany wasn't. I mean, there's very little for you to get for Germany that you would ever get. I mean, maybe you get Munich. The only way you're going to continue to grow is by really stabbing Russia. That's the intuitive thing to do there. And you could have easily taken Bulgaria with a follow-up to Romania, and you had the help. I'm sure Italy would have then helped you get into Sevastopol, or Sevastopol, you should say. And I feel like that would probably be the way to go, because, I mean, Germany's kind of a dead end. And if you're wanting to solo, if you're wanting to get a good draw, you need to attack Russia, and probably at the same time work out some things. Really, France and England, those are going to be the natural allies for you. Squeeze, get some Russian dots, squeeze Italy, get a 3-way draw.
So it wasn't that it wasn't present in my mind. The first thing you need to know is Nikolai, England, would not respond to any of my text messages at all. Not even a hello. Even before 03, and I wrote him a text. I'm sure I could pull it up. Said, "Are we just going to play gunboat?" Because the other thing I had in my mind was, and maybe this is wrong, but I knew what Russia was going to do. I knew Russia's moving up, and I knew that it was likely, because I had gotten some press from the Western powers, like, damn, you guys are good, that I was going to get blocked either in Bohemia or Tyrolia. And so I thought, okay, we're going to have the bounce. One of those lines is going to bounce, and we can see how things play out a bit, and Russia will be moving units away. Meanwhile, there's a Russian disband coming, and I wanted that fleet out of Sevastopol. So I was afraid to move now.
Sure. Yeah, and I think if your thought is I'm going to wait to stab because it'll always be there, I think that's not a bad play. But it needs to happen relatively soon. But you moved everything away, making that stab much more difficult.
Right. Okay. So you're right. Eventually, I did, but so does Russia at some level here. And as we just sort of go through, what you're seeing is 3 powers on the west versus the 3 powers in the east.
Oh, I hated it.
Everybody hated it. And Eddie was like 6-way draw, 6-way draw. And Italy, my other power, is like 6-way draw, 6-way draw. And I can't be the guy not saying 6-way draw in my mind, because then I think, well, then one of those 2 guys is going to, or both of them are just going to jump on me. So with them, I'm singing the praises of 6-way draw, 6-way draw, but in my head going, I needed a solo and I'm going to settle for a 6-way draw in fall of 1904. Is that what's going to happen here? And finally, Nikolai calls me now. We're now he calls me during the adjustments, winter of 2005. All right. And he tells me, let's do the double stab. I go, I'm waiting for it, brother. I go, I've been calling, and you haven't got a hold of me. He's like, well, the time wasn't right until now. And I'm like, okay. And one thing about the top players that I've discovered is just, it's not cockiness, but it's a strength of personality and a certainty that they use with their language. And so we agreed right here that he would take Denmark and Holland, and then I would take Romania and Bulgaria. Except he didn't do that. I mean, he didn't do it in the spring, but he moved his fleet away from Sweden to the Gulf of Bothnia. So he didn't get back into Denmark. Either Germany got nervous or something. I don't really know. But so the 2 and 2, the idea was to get Germany with two centers, to England and me 2 centers. And the move I was most concerned about was that Eddie would see the hold in Budapest and start thinking to himself, maybe I slipped that army in Ukraine down to Romania. But okay, if that happens, it happens. But this is where I do make the stab for 2. The bounce in Trieste is arranged with Italy. Right before adjudication, I told Italy what I was doing because I didn't think he would have enough time to actually get Eddie on the phone and tell him. And
I'm
told
curious
him
about that. Yeah. I would have probably put Bohemia into Galicia. Because I think having Vienna back, you don't have to worry about getting that support cut if you wanted. That's not a big deal. It's probably not worth talking about.
Well, Germany had been holding the entire time. I mean, I saw it. I guess I was just more thinking. I was actually thinking a little bit about how I was going to sell this to Eddie. When he called me up. Pardon?
I was just making a joke. I'm just visiting.
Oh, did we lose you?
We're just redecorating. Yeah, but you know what? He handled it very, very well. And
he goes, just tell me why you did it. And I said, because I didn't play. I didn't, this is my first tournament. I didn't come here for a 6-way draw. It's the only game I got. And uh, he goes, well, what kind of draw did you come here for? And I said, I'd be happy to take a 5-way draw, even though that was a lie. You know, so I told him that, and he's like, I don't believe you. And I'm like, well, what could I do to make you believe me? And he's like, waive both bills. And I go, I'm not going to waive both bills. But on the other hand, I knew Italy was going to do nothing with me. Everything I had with Italy was 100% arranged, 100%, and he was not the kind of guy that was going to be a problem. So to some degree of controversy, I only built Budapest. Period. I figured that was all I needed. I viewed Italy as no threat. I didn't think I'd be advancing on Germany, which is, I think, a critical error in my thought process. So here I am, and Eddie's like, okay, great. Let's, and he tells me all the orders I'm supposed to do and everything I'm supposed to write. And I went forward taking Warsaw and moving my fleet to Constantinople, because this is the only thing I'm concerned about, was Russia getting the little army around, into Armenia. And I'm like, all right, I need to have something over there to mess with a rogue army, and I'm happy with it. Now's the point where he asked me, how did Eddie take this?
Okay, how did Eddie take this?
He was very upset, and you could tell it was almost aggressive. And Chris Martin, if you've listened this far in the podcast, the answer that I told Eddie is, I said, Eddie, I took a page out of your book. I just saw Diplomacy Academy where you were interviewed by Chris Martin, where you talked about how a player stabbed you, and you got back on their good side and stabbed them. And you said the lesson to all the listeners is, if you stab somebody, keep going. And I go, so I just followed what you said to do. And he started laughing hysterically. He goes, well, you did what you should have done. Is what he told me.
And that's the thing that's so frustrating to me about the Austria in my game. I'm like, listen, people respect that type of play. You're great players here. Respect that. Of course, people are going to try to put you on a guilt trip and do all these different things, but play out your plan, because the best way to show that your plan is good is when it works. So, yeah, that's perfect. And that's the reaction of your great players. They know it's a game, and they're trying to work their will. And when you can kind of step outside the game and say, look, man, I'm doing exactly what you would do, and they're like, yeah, I guess that's true.
So that was fun. That was my most fun moment of the game. And I was sort of 100% committed here until you see England in fall 1906. Do you see this sneaky little support of Livonia from Moscow to Warsaw?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
okay, let me mention something. So I talked about keeping some of your armies back because you didn't have the armies to really make that push against Russia. And so this is, to me, tactically, this focus on Germany, which I don't think Germany, after England stabbed, Germany's not going to be attacking you. If you lay off him, you can even offer support. But if you would have focused more your units on Russia, I think, you would have got that pretty easily.
The thinking, rightly or wrongly, was this. Eddie faced a threat from the north and the south. And England wanted Eddie to focus on me, and I wanted Eddie to focus on England. And I was trying to do everything to convince Eddie at this point that I really was just looking for a 5-way draw. But you're dead right. The lack of the army there, that was, the lack of having concentrated force, forces me to support, play the long game. Italy's jealous at this point. He demands Greece for Ankara, so we agree to a trade, and I'm like a tad upset. Although on the other hand, I know now that I can get Sevastopol uh, at this point, and I'm like, all right, I can do this. And I get on the phone with England, and it, the guy had a very soothing French accent, and it was just hysterical talking to him. And and I go, why didn't you tell me, what you were going to do? You're going to support Moscow into Warsaw. And he goes, I'm still on your side. He goes, I just didn't want you to get too big too fast. And it was just so laissez-faire the way it came across. I couldn't help, admiring the guy. And at this point, I'm like, all right, look, we can kill Germany, we can kill Russia. That's the way, we should probably go. But then the French guy goes, oh, it's Eddie. I love Eddie. Eddie is great. He just kept talking about how whatever Eddie says, I just do. And I'm like, I don't believe that to be true, by the way, but it was really sort of frustrating. And then in another move, he helps out Germany. So now I'm sort of mad at England. And England had said he was never he took an Umble stand. I'm never agreeing to a 5-way draw. I'm never agreeing to a 6-way draw. I'm never agreeing to a 5-way draw. And I'm like, fine. England's never going to enter draw, period. Eddie, meanwhile, is starting to lose faith in me. And I should have just lied to him. He goes, did you order a 5-way draw? And I had not ordered a 5-way draw. And he goes, you got to order it. And you got to tell me you ordered it. And I did, which I don't know if he steamrolled me, but what I didn't realize was that Nikolai, as England, had also entered the draw. And this was disheartening to me, to say the least, because at the end of 2007, just as I had Russia finally agree, if you see here, we bounced in Armenia, that was arranged, but you see how I'm getting them moving north, concentrating on England? That's what all that work had been for. Getting some German dots and then getting Russia to move up.
Yeah.
And the whole time when Eddie pressured me on the draw, I'm like, I entered it, and I actually did enter it. I told him the truth because I didn't feel like I wanted to lie to a 70-year-old man on a tournament game. Nikolai also enters it, and there we go. It is game over.
Yeah.
And I'm in a 5-way draw in the lead, tied with England at 9 centers. I could have done so much more. I thought a 3-way was definitely in the offing. France had made some bad moves. I thought we would have had the stalemate line.
I think you could have won Best Austria if you would have done a 3-way draw. You only needed 12 to tie, I think. I think that's right. I think you only needed 12. No, that's not right. Maybe it was 10. I think you may have only needed 10 in a 3-way draw to get Best Austria. You would have tied and got that if you would have pushed. And I think probably what would have happened would have been you, France, and England. That was going to be the fastest. But yeah, that's definitely a disappointing result because it ended too soon.
It ended too soon, and that is the thing about the pressure of the draws. I'm not used to all that, and it was a failure of imagination on my part in some ways, and maybe I could have played it better a little tactically, but I thought I played it great socially, to be honest with you, which is my strength as a player.
Yeah, you had a very good game against both Turkey and Russia. Are good players. Of course, Russia, definitely I know is an elite player, and has been so for decades. But Turkey is a competent player too. And no, this was an excellent game on your part. It was just not the end game. I think you played the mid game well, but that end game, that's kind of where it fell apart.
Yeah, and there were some concerns I had about. I'm revealing my inner self to you. I don't have an inner Umble. Okay, I don't have an inner confidence in my tactics. I think I'm competent tactically, but not superior like you are. And I'm like, damn, am I going to really measure up against England tactically? I needed to have a three-way, right? And I needed to keep that stalemate line. So those were that was in my head at some level, that I didn't want to blow it, which I could have. That's how I always think a little bit. I don't want to give short shrift and to your last game, your crowning achievement here, which was the Dixie game in round 2. You wanted to start in the fall of 1901, and
Yeah.
you're England, and
Yes.
much like when you were France helping England in, France helped you into Belgium.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The way I approached it was just, hey, can we both start at 5? I said, how does that sound to you? I'll go up and eventually get Holland. You'll get Belgium. Now, interestingly enough, in our discussions, I just assumed he was going to help me in. Well, the timer went out, and I said, so are you going to support me in from whatever? And he goes, oh, no, I wasn't going that direction. So his original plan was just for me and Germany to bounce. Germany was come across as very greedy to me. He was, I'm going to grab, I want everything. I want the lowland countries, this kind of thing, which, let me just put this out there. It is never great to begin a conversation with, I want this, you want people to offer that or agree to it. You want to come around to it, but just starting off by saying, I want this, is a horrible way to start an alliance. Germany did that. Now, I tell France, now, wait a minute, you can just go to Picardy and support me in. And he's like, well, I think it's too late. I go, it's not too late until it resolves. So then he put that in. He supported me in, which was great. And of course, Germany then is all upset. Why did you take Belgium? And I said, well, first off, you didn't tell me that you were taking Belgium. Well, he didn't say in so many words he's doing Belgium.
Wanted it. It was an aspirational goal.
Yeah, right. Well, he said the Low Countries. He actually didn't say Belgium. He said Low Countries. But anyway, I said on the same token, I said, you went for it too. I said, just so happened France offered it. And then I began playing it this way. I said, I hope you see that France chose me over you, but I want to ally with you more than him. I just took what he offered. But France has already made his decision. France chose me. I've not chosen France, but he chose me. And that clicked for Germany. And Germany was like, okay, all right, I want to work with you. Let's do this. Because I created now you have no choice. You have to choose me. And that's going
he's got a big problem. Germany, look at that little army that went into Munich.
Oh, yeah, that's also another thing. So there's another thing that built that up. Both me and France are kind of mentioning to Italy, hey, Munich is going to be open. Why don't you just go ahead and take it? And I didn't push super hard, but I also said to Germany, I said this, because I wasn't 100% sure France was going to support, I suppose. I felt pretty sure. Me and France really hit it off. We knew each other through discussions, over email. So me and him were working out, we already kind of had, I think, a natural desire to want to work together in our first ever game. But I told Germany, I said, I think Italy may go for Munich. You need to move back and do that. I just wanted to ensure that I got Belgium. So I pushed him a few times about it, and he still went for Belgium. And so that was another thing I said. I go, look, man, I tried to help you, and you instead chose to try to grab Belgium. I said, all of the problems here are not on me. I've tried to help you. You've just chosen to prioritize this. So yeah, that was a push for me. Now, I'm pretty happy with the next thing that happened.
Hey, tell me this. How did you get France to move to Spain with the fleet?
I don't think I had anything to do with that. I'd have to look back and see. I don't think I did that. I think he did. But I used that in a moment.
All right. So now we got the builds.
Yep. So I pushed Italy, build 2 fleets. I said, you know what? We can get rid of France quickly. Let's do 2 fleets. I had no intention of working against France. But I knew that if Italy built 2 fleets and went towards France, that was going to tie France down, and I could grab my centers in the north. I was going to have a lot of space to do things. And so that was my big selling point. And it worked out great. Now France was super focused. Italy was super focused at each other. And now Germany did a good job here working with Italy to say, okay,
vacate Munich.
Yeah, let's work together against France.
But if
And
I'm not mistaken, I don't think Germany got that Munich dot back in the fall.
No, he doesn't. Doesn't in the fall. But notice that. Hey, notice.
I'm going to go back, but yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
All right. So notice there, he supports me to Sweden. Okay. Now, I personally was trying to get Russia to support me to Sweden too, because I said, look, if you support me to Sweden, I'm not going to have anything in Norway, and we can work together. I'll get you into Denmark, but you need to support me to Sweden, and then we don't have to worry about either one of us sneaking into each other's centers. And Russia,
you were going to do what with Edinburgh for that?
I wouldn't have convoyed to Norway if they would have offered it, but she refused. No, I'm not going to do that, which to me was mind-boggling. Like why you would refuse that and leave St. Petersburg open? Because here's the thing, this is the spring move. So if she gets Sweden, all I have to do is walk into St. Petersburg. So there's a reason why she's not going to make it very long. She was very insistent on her own way and not flexible. So
let me ask you this. You got German support into Sweden. Did you tell them you would trade Belgium for that?
No, I didn't. My basic thing was this. I go, look, France is offering me all of these centers. He's offering to do all of these things. I said, if you really want me to work with you, which I want to, you need to show that and support me into Sweden, is what I said. And I said, show me this, and give me that support. And so
he needed a friend.
Yeah. He didn't really have a lot of options here because he needed me to want to work with him. And so he did it. And I suppose it was the right move to make.
Was Belgium supporting Picardy de Burr?
Yes, but I also told him I was doing that. And I said, break support.
Perfect.
Now the thing is, Germany and Italy are continuing to tell me, okay, you've got to move to the English Channel. You got to move to the English Channel. So I held off on that for a long, long time until I finally got French okay. But yeah, they were constantly being upset about that. But I had really no intention of attacking France. The big reason, and I've thought a lot about this, because my goal really in this game was to get a solo, because someone else had soloed before. So my real goal here was to get a solo, and I've thought a lot. Should I have attacked France instead to get that? And I've kind of come to the conclusion, I actually think it would more likely what would have happened here would have been a 4-way draw if I would have attacked France first. So my real thought process was I need to kill Germany before I kill France. He's occupied with Italy. It's always going to be there. I think that was probably the smart thing to do. And so I think I feel, after kind of doubting myself a few times, that killing Germany first was the right call.
And here was how you moved in on the kill.
Yeah.
The convoy, the Umble loves convoys. The convoy into Denmark.
Hey, everybody loves convoys.
Everybody does love a convoy.
Problem is, people aren't creative enough a lot of times to use them effectively. So, but everybody loves a convoy.
We should do a diplomacy briefing. You should do an article on convoying. I think people would like to read it. I know no one better, but on the other hand, I don't know many people. This was a very good season for you. What is going on with the endless bounces in Mid-Atlantic? Did you know those were happening, or?
Yeah, I think I encourage France to do that because I don't want Italy getting in. And you'll notice I moved to the English Sea there, and that's with French support or French agreement. And so, there's not much that France can say. And so I told him, I said, look, we're this much in it together. I'm focused on Germany. I go, but you're going to need my help, that English fleet at some point. So I said,
And you're right. That's not that doesn't. You may have eventually wanted to move in on France, but that's a correct statement.
right. So he agreed and he said, look, we're in it together. I kind of got to trust you. And Germany's still trying to work with me. But yeah, I took Denmark. And as I recall, I think right after this, he quits. Because we get a new Germany.
And Germany quits. He gets into the tournament and decides, I'm done. It's been a long day and I can't win, and just vacates. I can't believe it.
Yeah. And here becomes the great twist. The person that takes over Germany is Austria from my old game.
Oh, the guy who did not the three-way, that didn't stab Italy.
Yes. And his first thing is to me, he goes, I kind of did you wrong. I'll help you get to a two-way or solo. And again, that was tempting. I'm not 100% sure how true that was, but he had stuck with Italy the whole time. It was very tempting, but again, it came down to I really didn't feel like that stabbing France at this point was going to get me to a solo. I felt like
this means that Austria didn't have a prearranged second game.
Right. Yeah, he hadn't.
And I don't think that would have been a credible thing to tell you, because he, if I remember correctly, was on 10 as Austria in the four-way. He himself is going to want to do better. So sure. I wouldn't have believed him either.
Yeah, I mean, now I already had Denmark, so he's down to 3 centers. So he's not, he's not a formidable person. So I think it's right after this. So let's go ahead and advance it. I may be wrong. It may have been right after this one.
You're talking about the double, the chain?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Here it is. This was a thing of beauty. See, so just like Eddie, I know how to suck up. Mm-hmm. But this was a thing of beauty, objectively.
Yeah. Convoying into Prussia because I want to set up to be able to take Berlin, and I'm moving into Sweden to be able to at some point do some kind of a convoy to Livonia, or to move to Finland and convoy up later.
Why you didn't go into St. Petersburg? Why?
Because I don't want France. I don't want France to collapse. I don't have the units right now to commit to holding it, because I'm going to need to at least commit 2 units, and I don't want to tie those up. I'd rather get them over the stalemate line.
You mean you didn't you didn't want Russia to go? Oh, you were like, you need the arm. When you said you didn't want France to collapse, did you mean Russia, or what am I missing?
Yeah, that's what I meant, Russia. And I think Russia made a good move overall. I mean, moving to Livonia, if I try to convoy, but also giving Moscow a place to retreat back. I think that was the smart move to make. But I think the new Germany was here, because I was giving them, at this point, he said, just tell me what to do. So I just wrote his orders, and then in the fall, I'm going to take 2 centers from him, I recall.
Holland and Berlin.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Pulled Belgium up, moved the English Channel in, and he messaged me right after that, and he goes, "Man, that's cold."
So did you write Germany's orders for him here too?
Yeah, I did.
And you told him that that chain convoy was a part of just to get armies up in the towards Russia's way?
Attack Russia, something like that. But it was nothing of the sort. It was all, and I really did. I thought about maybe working with him, but at the end of the day, it just it didn't feel like that was the thing to do. Now, perhaps it was. Perhaps giving Italy some extra space, but I just start to believe that the end result would have been a four-way draw, not a solo. So anyway, I make the move. I'm going to be getting now 2 more builds.
But on the other hand, AT is a real player.
Right. Yep.
So
France, Russia collapsed. Yeah, Russia had collapsed. As I recall, I think in the first year, Russia didn't even get a build.
All right, you wanted to next go to 06, where you've, by the way, built army after army after army, the Umble way, and I loved it because I felt like, listening to you in the Nexus finals about how to play England, if you get to see a clinic here. This was great.
Yeah, if you're going to solo, you've got to put a lot of armies onto the continent so then that you can get to that 18, because you can't win by just coastal provinces. You got to drop armies and keep building them. So that's what I'm doing here. At this point, you can pretty much already look at it and see a solo is not coming though. Austria's just taken over Italy, and he's just got such a presence. There's no way a solo is going to come. But yet, both Austria and Turkey knew about me and my background, and they somehow believed I still had some magic potion to pull a solo out of this. So they were very, very concerned, and they wanted a four-way draw, plus it was late. So I had told them already, I said, look, I am not taking a four-way draw, and I will play 5 hours if I have to.
What is France telling you at this point? What is France saying? Hey, let's do the four-way. Let's do the four-way.
Well,
how are you managing that with France?
Well, first off, Russia had committed to not accepting any type of. Russia was not going to surrender.
Why?
She said,
I get why she wouldn't surrender, but why? You're saying she wouldn't accept a draw?
Yeah, that's what. But she would not accept a draw if she wasn't included.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's dumb too, because Russia's going to be gone.
And what I'm telling England is, look, because you can see Turkey supported St. Petersburg. I said, I got to get the fleets up there so that I can force St. Petersburg. You can't hold on to that forever. And so I built Fleet Edinburgh, but my entire plan was in the fall, I'm going to make my move against France, which is what I did.
All right. And that would be Edinburgh, my friend. All right.
And the big help there.
Here we go. Move. The big move.
Turkey.
And how do you get Turkey to stop supporting St. Petersburg? Because now you're just saying, dude, I'm going to move on France.
Yep. I said, look, I'll make a build. I'll build Fleet Liverpool, I think is what I said, which was my plan initially. But I said, I'm going to move everything south. I said, we have to kill Russia anyway. I'm not going to be able to make any progress on you ultimately. So I think he was also a little worried about Austria trying something. I'm not 100% sure of that, but his moves kind of almost make you think that.
Kept holding in the black. He was ready. I mean, he wanted a little leverage on Austria.
Yeah. Yep. So I moved my armies down.
So how does France react to this?
He didn't even try to get out of it. Like, he basically just accepted it and was like, I don't know. He was cool. He didn't get mad, but he didn't really. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered. I was really committed. But the one thing about England in that last game, like when I stabbed him, like he just was a savant in trying to change my course, and he did it. We were able to work out something to make it happen. And France didn't. It was late, but France didn't really say a lot at all at that point until later in the game after it was over.
Yeah, but there's just not much for France to work with you on right now.
No.
You only have one place to grow. You're not going to grow in Moscow.
Yeah.
After this.
Yeah, and he wrote an AAR later, and he said, I should have, because I had told France many times, I'm not doing a four-way draw. I said, we're going to take out one of them. And I think, I was telling France Austria is going to turn on him at some point. But he goes, I should have probably known that I was going to get stabbed, because he was constantly talking about he would not do a four-way draw. And so
yeah, and if you look at the board, he's the easiest guy to get squeezed. You
right.
build the army. Why? I assume you thought you could already force Mid-Atlantic Ocean. You didn't need another fleet.
Right.
Another army on the continent would be good.
Well, I thought, I need to prioritize. I need to prioritize him losing a center. He didn't have 2 units on the Mid Atlantic, so I knew I could always build that fleet the next year after I took Brest from him. So I guaranteed that convoy happened um, by supporting it in, and then I moved down to Mid Atlantic, and surprisingly, he didn't even try to contest it.
He played
Yeah.
for position. I'm surprised that at this point Austria doesn't assist you into Munich.
Right. I was telling him that I would support him into Munich. I said, I will support
Would it
you
work
into.
too?
He was convinced somehow. These guys were just convinced because they both knew about me. They were convinced that I had some kind of magic potion that if they hurt France at all, I was going to solo. And so it took a little while for them to finally see, okay, he can't solo, and we need to get the game to end because they wanted the game to end. So we're going to have to kill France. So in the next one, he does make his move.
Moves to Munich.
Yeah.
France takes Mid-Atlantic back, but you get Brest.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a matter of time at this point.
Yeah, and
and then this surprisingly happens. How does it end?
France agreed to surrender, and Italy had to. France had originally said, "I will not do it. You're going to have to eliminate me." And by this point, I think he realized the commitment was there to make it happen. We were going to do it, and because in this next move, you notice if he doesn't surrender in this next move, he's losing Paris and Marseille. So he had no choice but to. I mean, if he doesn't lose it, then he's down to 2 centers. So it was going to be done, and he decided rather than stay up another hour, he would just allow it. Of course, the one sad part of this is if I would have continued the game, this probably would have got me third. If I would have got 2 more centers, I would have been third. And the fact that
the surrendering got you a 3-way draw, but you did not, and you ended up being top on this board, but you could have ended up with 14, not 12.
Right. Yeah. There was no system in place where I would get to 18. The units just weren't there, I believe, to force it. It just wasn't there. Getting that extra 18th unit, because with that, Austria had so many armies that they could eventually force some things back. The 18th wasn't there to grab. And I don't, looking at it and looking at where everything was, Austria was going to be able to support, and they would have got the fleets and stuff in position. But if I could have got 2 more centers for sure, and that would have got me into third. So, but the truth is, I really didn't think I was going to be able to get third. I thought for sure there would be 2 people at least that got 2 third places, and it turns out there wasn't. So all the people that were competing were a third and a fourth place, and it was 2 centers shy.
But nevertheless, third is not the same as first, and you would have been disappointed at a third. I know you well enough to know that, but I thought this was a tremendous result. 4th out of 76 players, best England. It's a great game to watch to learn how to play England, and love the commentary.
Well, I was told, though, I was listening to the award ceremony, so I don't get a plaque, but I apparently get a paper certificate for getting 4th. So there's that.
You do have that. You're right. It's gold, silver, bronze, paper.
Yeah.
and you
I'll
got the
get a
paper.
dollar store. I'll get a dollar store frame to hang it in.
But look, you've announced yourself on the scene, okay? And this format is perfectly geared towards someone like you. And frankly, it's really good for me too. I enjoyed it. I hope we get to see more of this. Is there anything else you want to talk about for our listeners on this podcast?
Yeah. That just recently was announced today, actually, that Boston's going to be doing a similar tournament like this on June 20th. They are going to do it through the Discord server rather than WebEx. I think that we're going to find that these type of tournaments are going to, the chat function is going to be through Discord. I think that's the direction it's going. I've definitely encouraged it. I think, there's already so many players on Discord already that are diplomacy players that it just makes sense to use that as the platform. So that's going to be an exciting day. They're going to do, I believe right now, 2 rounds on the Saturday, just like this last one. But it's the Boston Backbiters, and you should be able to Google them and find out some information. But the best way to stay connected is subscribe to the briefing, diplomacybriefing.com, and that way you will be up to date on everything that is happening.
Yep, I've learned my lesson. Even though I am a patron of the briefing, I've learned that I should actually read it. And if you want objective analysis of this game, of both of your games and mine, you can go to Windy City Weasels on YouTube. I will try and put a card up, Chris Martin, if you're listening. But it was a lot of good commentary about each of these and some other very good games as well. Thanks, Umble. Please have a good evening. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So also what ended up happening, so Austria had very much tried to push for a 4-way draw and change my mind. Well, this game got him best Austria. So he came back, we were talking later, so he thanked me for pushing him into that and became a patron of the briefing. So it all worked out great.
Well, see, it all works out well in the end, just as intended. I had a great experience. You had a great experience and results, and I hope we see more tournaments like this in the future. Thanks to everybody, and have a good evening. Bye-bye.